Alright, so welcome to my coloring tutorial. This one is based off of some requests that I've gotten from Twitter. The concept of the piece also comes from Twitter, from the fact that on that Pokemon meme a lot of people were responding that my persona would be either ghost or dark type. So that's what we are drawing today. It's kind of a cliche concept, I know, but like the colors should be kind of interesting, so it should be good for me to show y'all how I do some more like wild color palettes where I'll put, I'll throw pink and green on there and well, you'll see, it'll be interesting. But first of all, a disclaimer, I'm self-taught. I have no art school, formal training kind of thing. I have no formal training in color theory, so anything that I know about coloring is just stuff that I have found on my own or just kind of taught myself along the way. So I might not have the terminology that you're familiar with or that exists. So I might not totally know how to accurately describe things, but I'm going to try my best. And I figured that since I don't totally know how to teach this kind of stuff, if I'm going to do a coloring tutorial, probably the best thing that I can do is just kind of show y'all the process of me coloring a piece of art. So that's what we're going to be doing today. The video is about to speed up in a minute because I'm just going to go over speed painting in the flat colors, but then once we get the flat colors on there, then I'm going to go into the more interesting stuff, actually coloring. Alright, so let's jump right into it. I'm using the flat colors directly from the reference sheet and just putting those down. For right now, I'm already committing a cardinal sin, which is that I haven't changed the background. Oh, there we go. I've changed the background color. And so you want it to be a color that's usually kind of close to gray so that you can kind of see what you're still doing when you're putting down these flat colors. But at the same time, you also kind of want to tint it a color that you feel is going to represent the mood of the piece of what you're going for in the end. So in the end, I'm thinking I want this piece to have mostly purple, and so I put that as kind of my background color, or at least I tint my background color towards purple. And the reason that I put that purple is so that consciously or subconsciously I'll be tinting the rest of the colors to kind of match it. So as you can see, all the other colors that I've put down for these flat colors have been readjusted right after I put them down because they were too bright or too saturated. So I kind of adjusted them down to that purple that I'm aiming for. And the same thing goes for the whites of the eyes and the teeth. So you never want those to be pure white. So for this, I made the whites of the eyes periwinkle because that's just what they are on the ref sheet anyway. But I made the teeth the same color. This is going to give it more depth. You can also see that the white markings and the black markings that are usually those two colors, the white markings have been made kind of a gray lavender and the black markings have been made navy. So if you have the color wheel up in front of you as a square, you want to stay away from the four extreme points of those square. You want to leave the extreme points to extreme cases. Now what I mean by that is, for example, if you look at the pupil of his eye, that's pure white, and so is his blind eye, because those are going to be kind of focal points. We want the attention to go back to his eyes right there. Same with that inner red ring around his eye. The inner ring of his iris, it is bright red. It is completely purely saturated. Because that's a focal point. I didn't make his earring, which is the same shade of red, that saturated because I don't want the focal point over there. I want the flow of the piece to go kind of down his head towards the middle. And so that's what you see here. You see kind of me drawing out the flow of the piece and where I want kind of the colors to line up. And you want to keep that in mind for the entire time that you're drawing. So in this next part, I'm going to be laying down some overlay layers to kind of get a basic feel for what colors I want to put on here. So I start off putting some purple because that was our background color, and like I said, it's kind of the mood of the piece that I want for the end game here. So I add that purple first, and then I start putting down some green to complement the red of the eye. Then I start adding some blue because it's in between that green and that purple. So basically you just kind of add your shading and your lighting colors until you kind of feel like you like those colors for the shading and the lighting. Usually you use cool colors for shading and warm colors for lighting, but for this piece in particular I'm using cool colors also for the lighting just because of the kind of ominous mood. But then after we have those gradient overlays laid down, we're going to go right into painting over them. So here's where you kind of take those guidelines and you make the piece your own. So you start color picking and you start taking those colors and introducing them to other parts of the piece. And I'm going to be at this stage doing this for a while, so hopefully you'll kind of pick up some of the patterns, but basically you can see that I'm kind of adding colors that have already been introduced to the piece, but I'm kind of reintroducing them in other areas, and I'm kind of lining them up in kind of movement lines like what we discussed earlier, like how there's just kind of a line going down the middle. Well, I put all the purple kind of going down the middle, or then I put kind of all the blue up by the back of his head. Like there's just kind of areas where each color kind of goes. And then I'm kind of throwing that color in little bits on other areas in a way that kind of lines up with where that larger group of that color is. So I'm also going to add some more purple lighting because I felt like there wasn't enough purple in the piece. So I did throw another additional overlay layer on and then kind of set that lower and then paint it over it. And eventually I'm going to take away all the overlay layers. And actually you can see that I have basically all the colors that were on those overlay layers, but I've now painted them onto the piece. I've now made it my own. It's now no longer a guideline. I've kind of painted over everything. And I can have all those wild colors on there without it looking weird, because now I have these overlay layers set to a lower and lower opacity as I go along. And that's kind of the goal, is that you set it to a lower and lower opacity to where you can kind of start putting your own colors onto here. And once those guidelines are gone, then you can move on to setting up some contrast. So I start putting some darker colors around the purple. I start kind of blending the purple area into the cyan area. I start adding some magenta, and then I blend that into orange. There's a lot of different things that you can do here, and you want to kind of keep these colors blending into each other so that they kind of look more natural and they don't stick out completely. You want to have bright colors without them all sticking out individually. You want them to be able to blend together, which is also why I keep this zoomed out the entire time. And that's really important because every once in a while I want to just kind of let my eyes unfocus a little bit. Now I don't see too well in the first place, so that kind of helps me. But I kind of just let my eyes unfocus a little bit. And then if everything still looks nice and everything is just kind of blending together very well, then I know that I'm doing a good job and then I can keep going. So it's nice to stay zoomed out and be kind of watching the overall blend the entire time while you're doing it. So at this point, I'm actually pretty much done with painting the bulk of it. At this point, I'm basically just doing highlights, and I'm using highlight colors that have already been used on here. And like I said, I'm just kind of redistributing different colors elsewhere on the piece. So I'm taking kind of my favorite colors, like the brightest colors that I liked a lot. You can see that I liked that magenta and I liked that purple and I liked that cyan. So I kept trying to use them other places. And I kind of use them pretty often as bounce lighting. So on that, on the nose and on the lips and on the eye, usually those are like the shiniest parts. So I can add a lot of those colors back onto there as bounce lighting. Here I don't do that as much. I do that on the nose, but I don't do that as much on the other areas. I guess just more for stylistic reasons, but it's definitely an option to add them back. I do add the magenta back though as that kind of smoke coming off the eye, just as another stylistic thing, but also to kind of balance out that magenta a little bit more on the other side of the face. But basically you want to remember that when you're adding these bright colors back, it's all about contrast and it's all about adding them sparingly. Like you see that I'm trying to add this red back a lot here, but it's not really working out. And so then I kind of try to start adding more darker colors back in so that I can create more contrast so that these brighter colors that I've added a lot of look a little more natural. So I go back to the background and start making that darker again. I start adding some texture. I start finishing up the background, reintroducing a lot of that purple and that blue so that those other colors will pop a little more. So you want to keep the focus on, if you want your focus to be on those brighter colors, if you want that to be your focal point, then you need to make the rest of it a lot darker. And you need to be kind of watching the balance of those brighter colors and making sure that they're used sparingly, but also that they're used in a way that balances the other bright colors and in a way that is kind of along with the movement lines of your piece in general. So once you've done all your finishing little details and you've painted everything completely, you have all your textures on there, you can go back once more and do some overlay layers just lightly, just to kind of get some balance back in there and get some make your colors pop more by putting some like vividness over them. And then that's just kind of your final touch. You don't want to be too heavy on those overlay layers because remember, those were just a guideline at the beginning and they can be kind of a finisher at the end, but they're not your main tool for coloring here. You want to make your paintbrush your main tool. You want to make your color picker your main tool. You don't want to make the gradients your main tool. You don't want to make the overlay layers your main tool. Just kind of something to help you find balance at the beginning and also at the end. So thanks for watching. I hope y'all learned something from that. Unfortunately, the video editing software voiceover tool doesn't really sync up with the video very well at all. So a lot of my voiceover really doesn't sync with the video well. Had a lot of trouble doing that. I actually had to record the voiceover in Audacity in parts and then put it in and then line it up with the video. Although even that didn't really work out very well. So I'm going to have to try and find a better way to do this next time. Whenever I initially recorded this, it was actually a 2-hour long video of just me going through this drawing and providing commentary as I went along in real time. and that was actually really useful. A lot of that commentary was a lot more succinct and a lot more relevant to what was actually going on screen. But of course I couldn't really upload that 2-hour long video. Unless somebody actually does want to watch that, I'm not going to upload a 2-hour long video. So I was thinking maybe sometime I could try a stream if that's something y'all would be interested in, where I could be drawing and then I could have my commentary in real time so that it would actually make a little more sense with what's up on the screen. So if that's something that y'all would be interested in, let me know in the comments, or if you like this video or you found it interesting, or if you learned anything, also let me know in the comments. Maybe I'll try something like this again. Thanks for watching.